Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Thursday, June 11, 2020. As always, we are coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everyone. It has been a rough couple days here, and with the studio and Restream and all sorts of good stuff. So yes, it is Thursday, not Tuesday, obviously, and I apologize to everybody who was trying to tune in on Tuesday and couldn't figure out what was going on. But I guess Restream had an issue, and we couldn't get on at all either. It kept kicking us off, and there was no way we could possibly do the show. So I apologize for that, and but we're on today, and that is a wonderful thing. So yeah, if you see the color on my face, I'm a little red. I'm looking at the screens over here, and we just got back from the beach. Caleb and I went to Juno Beach, or Jupiter Dog Beach today, and we brought Nira. And one of the many greatest perks about living in South Florida is the dog beaches. And I'm sure there's dog beaches everywhere in California and up the coastlines and stuff, but there's something special about the dog beaches here because it's just wonderful warm water. The oceans are blue, and the sand feels so good on your skin. And it was nice because this is the first real time I got to get out since February, beginning of February, when I got really, really sick. And we lasted about 3 hours, which is really, really good for me because usually I last about an hour, maybe an hour and a half doing something, and then I'm like done and I have to get out. But yeah, I got to the beach and I'm excited. Baby steps to health, and it just feels so good, especially with that ocean and connecting to Mother Earth and that ocean, the water, the salt, and the air, and just breathing in all that stuff. It just kind of cleanses and refreshes everything. So yeah, man, that's good feeling all around. So, what's funny is I've been reminiscing lately the 60s moods and just my 60s moods. And if you pay attention to my social media, I have been, I told you guys that one of my last lives was during the 60s. I was I was a male, and I was drafted into the Vietnam War, where I was killed and stuff. But at least I got to experience some of the 60s before that happened. And man, I love the music. I love everything about it. And people were just free, and it was about free love and no consequences. Later, there was a lot of consequences, but at that time, we didn't think about that. And, it's kind of funny that I carried that over into this life. When I was young, and especially in the 80s, that's all I would listen to. And I knew things about the 60s. My parents were always like, hey, there's 80s music. And I listened to some of the 80s, but there was nothing like the 60s. And I knew just certain things about it. And, yeah, man, I just miss it. So it's been nothing but 60s music here in the house and at the beach and everything else. And so if you guys ever tap into yourselves, if you guys ever tap into past lives, or you have an inkling towards something, go with it and explore it and see what it's like, because you may discover a whole bit about yourself that you don't know, especially in your past, that you don't really know, and it may trigger a memory. And that's always what I did. Even if I wasn't sure of what it was, I would go towards it because I knew I liked it. I knew I had an interest in it, and if I dove right in, it awakened something in me all the time. And then all of a sudden my past started coming through, and and that's sometimes how I learn about even my past lives. So another exciting news. I know we're going to have some exciting news. We're going to go a little over on the news today, but the homeless clothes drive yesterday was a great success. I am so excited. Thank you, Caleb. Big thank you to Caleb for helping me and help running this the Spirit Communities, and thank you to everyone who donated clothes. Without your donations, we wouldn't have helped over 250 people yesterday. We got to meet some great people yesterday. Got to talk to a lot of people. Got to share in the community. Even though we're not a religious thing, we're more spiritual based. We got to work with churches and different people, and we're gonna start connecting through. We ran into a friend who works for the fire department, and we're gonna try working with the fire departments up in Riviera Beach and everything like that. So we are so excited, and it's just a great thing when people come together as a community. So please, if you never donate, if you never volunteer, please make some time in your life to do so, because if people need it, and it's not so much that it's a reward for you, but people really need help, and it's a good thing for us to be able to help others, because we may be there ourselves one day. So if not, you can always donate at GoFundMe. Go on GoFundMe.com and look up Spirit Communities, and please send us some money, because that money will help us reach more homeless people too as well. So one last announcement before we get into the show. We are now on iHeartRadio, which I'm so excited, because yes, that is a big platform, and we were on there before, and then when we stopped the show they took us off, but we are back on, and I'm excited. And as always, we are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and LinkedIn. Caleb is on there right now on Facebook Live and Twitch, and if you have any questions, feel free to do the live chat, because as the questions come in, Caleb will give them to me, and we'll talk about it, because that's what we want to do on the show. So but yes, we are trying Pandora. We're still waiting to hear from Pandora as well, so hopefully we get on Pandora podcast as well. So let's get into tonight's show, because it is a lot to get into. And tonight's show is riots, fighting, and chaos. Oh my! And yes, and I want to make a warning for people. This is a very sensitive topic. This is a not kid friendly show, so I want to put that out there right away. So viewer discretion advised, especially if you get sensitive about things. And we are going to talk about what's going on in the world, and we're going to kind of implement it and see how we can change our lives so that we can make the world a better place. So the first thing I want to talk about is the 2025 shift, and you guys know I've been mentioning that to you. You guys know, if you guys have been following me for the past 6-7 years, you guys know on my social medias and everything that I have been talking for at least the last 15 years about 2025, because there is a lot of stuff going on. And I attended a PFLAG meeting hosted by my very good friends Barb and Gary up here in Stewart yesterday, and they were talking about what was going on, the riots, all this stuff, and there's just so much stuff going on right now, so much chaos, COVID-19, like I said, the riots, there's LGBTQ type of issues going on, J.K. Rowling's making statements about transgender people, all sorts of things, people fighting. It is so chaotic. How do we survive in this? And yes, it is very tough for a lot of people who take things personally to survive in a world like this, because we tend to hold on to things. We tend to change. We tend to want to hold on to ideas, and we want to take them personally because they represent something to us. And rightfully so. When someone gets killed, or someone gets hurt, or someone's rights are being trampled on, it's hard not to take things personally, because it affects us. And a lot of people, feel justified in wanting to go out and do the things that they're doing, wanting to fight, wanting to, create arguments, wanting to, do marches, protests, whatever. And, and it's like this innate feeling that we get inside of us that really wants us to, just fight against whatever the corruption is in the world today. And we are going to feel this, we are going to be a lot more sensitive, I should say, over the next 5 years than anything, because the shift of the human evolution, this ascension that's going on, this 2025 shift, is really going to take place, and it's already starting to take place. It's the pre-warm-ups to everything that's going on. And and I always say that sometimes, and life people say as well, sometimes things get a little rough before they get a little bit, at ease. And but yes, we have to be able to start separating ourselves now. We have to be able to start learning how to deal with things in a different way, because this shift is teaching us who we are in the world, and this shift is teaching us how we are in the world and what we're going to be able to do. And if we don't understand what kind of the evolutionary shift that we're going through, then these type of riots, these type of chaos, this type of fighting will always persist in our life. Because if we don't make that jump, if we don't understand the jump that we are at, what ends up happening is that we will be consumed by the pain and anger and the fear that we reside in. And so we look at the world today and we say, well, there's a lot. 2020 hit us, and all of a sudden everybody started to, the world fell apart. We got hit with COVID, and whether you believe it's true or not, we're not going to debate that on this show today. But whether you believe it's not, then all of a sudden the riots are happening, and people are like, well, here in Florida we have hurricane season coming on, so we're crossing our fingers thinking, well, hopefully there's not hurricanes coming, and and what's next? That's what everybody's asking, because I've seen on TV Oprah and a bunch of people doing all these little shows and everything, all these interviews, and everybody's trying to figure out what is really going on in the world. And I think that's a good question, not just to ask about the world, but really about who we are as humanity. What's going on within us? What's going on within who we are that creates this type of chaos in ourselves? Or if when we see injustice, that we jump at the cause of the chaos because that is what we feel we need to do. And a lot of times people ask me, well, Miss Raina, aren't you upset at what's going on? And sometimes I answer, well, I'm indifferent. And it's not because I don't care. I care very much about the people and the lives and everybody of all people. But you have to start separating yourself from the chaos, especially when we talked about contracts last week, when we were talking about spiritual contracts. These type of things aren't in my path, and so for me to jump into them would cause chaos in my life. And even though there's a lot to fight for a lot of people, sometimes you have to understand where you're at in your life. And so what is going on with you? What is going on inside you that makes these things so personal? What is going on inside of you that triggers you in order for you to jump into this and say, well, you know what, I got to fight with these people, or I got to fight against this government, or I got to fight against whatever it is, my need to fight. Because really, when we're fighting, we're trying to find truth within ourselves, and I think we can all agree on that. We can all agree that when chaos comes, when anger comes, when fighting comes, we're trying to find the truth of who we are. And by fighting, we feel it gives us a sense of accomplishment. We feel it gives us a sense of understanding. It gives us a sense of purpose. But a lot of times it doesn't, because we think that, well, if we make victories, if we're fighting against all these things, we're fighting against all these ideas and these corrupt people and hate and injustice and everything, then we're making the world a better place. And in some ways, you can look at it like that if you want to look at good and bad and right and wrong and better and worse. But when those concepts are taken away, because those aren't really a reality, and that what ends up happening is you realize that adding more chaos to your life and adding more chaos to the world just adds to the chaos. And so I already saw a lot of posts coming up about a second wave of COVID-19, and people are already getting irate about this. People are already getting upset about this. People are saying, you know what, well, this is going on, and there's a second wave, and there's all these new cases, and you better not get me sick, and you're endangering my life, and how dare you people? And people are already starting to fight. And that is because those who love to live in fear are also those who will believe in anything that they see on thing and jump into that because they need that to survive. They need that for a sense of purpose. And so, no, that is not your responsibility to jump into all that stuff. It is not your responsibility to tell people how they should live and what they're doing is right or wrong or good or bad. If you make your choices, and your choices should affect you and you alone. And a lot of times we take that personally. And I've watched social media the last few days, and I've seen some very nice people become really irate, really angry, and it's almost mean that they're like, well, this is coming around, and you better stay in your house, and you better do this. If you have any respect for humanity, then you better. And we become lost in our anger. We become lost in our pain, and we become low level. We literally will drop our level to, let's say, if we want to look at the chakras. I know I usually don't talk about chakras much on this show, but if we use and associate it into the chakra, then we start to damage our root chakra, because our root chakra is the need to survival. It is our basic need of survival and instinct. It is where we go, where we feel the most safe. And so when we're in fear, we're not only damaging our physical bodies, such as our kidneys and everything like that, but we're actually damaging and slowing down our alignment. How can we be aligned? How can we be able to jump into this evolution? How can we prepare ourselves for an evolution if we are damaging our very core? We can't. And so we have to look at ourselves again and ask the question, what's going on with us? What is with us? Who is with us? Why are we acting this way? Why am I acting this way? Why am I reacting this way? Am I in judgment? Yes, I may feel justified by being upset that people aren't taking life seriously, or maybe you believe that COVID is real, and maybe it's not, but maybe you believe it and you're pushing your way on it. Maybe it is real and you don't believe it and you're pushing your way. Either way, you're causing chaos and you're creating that stagnation within inside you. So how can you rise? How can you raise your level of consciousness? How can you rise above and circulate and bring the consciousness up when you're at a low level of fighting? We can't. And so for us to jump in, and I've seen many of my friends who are spiritual, who are spiritual teachers, take to the streets that has nothing to do with them, and take to the streets and jump into these fights that have nothing to do. And I get it. I love all my friends. I love all of my friends, no matter what race they are, no matter what sexuality they are, but there is a time and place for my life to be able to understand where I need to jump in. And just because you care for a cause, that doesn't mean you have to jump in with, and you have to use judgment with that. And a lot of times we don't use it. And I know there are many of you that might, have an issue with what I'm saying, because you're gonna want to justify that. We're gonna say, well, Miss Raina, no, well, this is wrong of what we're seeing. This is wrong. Somebody was killed, and we got to stand up for that. Yes, somebody was killed. And that is not a thing, but that is not a pleasant experience. But at the same time, we have to look at the bigger picture. Things happen in the reason. Remember how last show we talked about contracts? Things happen for a reason. These are contracts playing out in order to spark change in certain areas, in order to bring attention. And so there are certain people contracted to these ideas. Not everyone's contracted, but it is your choice. And those that continue to live in fear, hate, and anger will jump into a contract that isn't theirs, because they will lower their vibration. Remember, we go towards what we really are inside. And that may sound very new agey to a lot of people, or very redundant maybe for a lot of people, but it is very true, because what you're attracted to and what you're interested in and what you're fighting for, is really what level you're attracted to, what your energy is. And so if we choose to take something personal, it's because we lowered our vibration and jumped into a contract and jumped into a vibration that isn't ours. We'll be right back after these messages from the life of Raina.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The Life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina 561-846-2190 and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and apparently we are still having some technical difficulties. So please bear with us. Restream messed up everything. There was an update in Streamlabs OBS, and every time it seems to update, it resets all of our settings, and we just got to go through this. So please bear with us, and please try to bear with us, I guess. So we were talking about what's going on, what's happening, and this jump that we have to make. We have to start disconnecting. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean that you don't care about what's going on in the world, and that you don't care about what happens to people. But what it means is that you're starting to dissociate from the ideas of life, because you're starting to recognize that although these things have to happen because souls need to grow, it is not part of your evolution. And so for some people, it may be part of your evolution. There are some people that really need to be in these contracts and in these spaces in order for us to grow, in order for these things to happen. But a lot of times we stunt our growth when we involve ourselves in something that is not us. And people ask me all the time, well, Miss Raina, why do we live so many lives? For one of that very reasons. Because one, we need a perspective. We need perspective of everything. We have to see perspective in every way through duality. And in order for us to have duality, we need to be in neutrality. And so when we're gaining perspective through everything, through every single life and experience in different ways for us to grow and understand. But then we also have these choice. We also have to choose. As we start to evolve, we start to say, well, okay, this isn't part of me anymore. I need to find a way to get out of the fear. I need to get out of the anger. I need to get out of the pain. I need to get out of the suffering. And I need to know when I need to involve myself in something that's not my, or that's my or not mine. And so, you have to learn to start resolving that ego. I know so many good-hearted people that are so miserable right now, that are so anguished. I mean, you look at them on cam or you talk to them in person, and they are just, and you just see it in their face. Their eyes are almost dead-like. There's no glistening in it. Their face, their skin, everything about them just screams misery. And it doesn't have to be this way. It is our choice to be this way, because our ego says, you know what, life sucks right now. There's killings going on, there's government control, there's media manipulation, there's lying, there's all this stuff going on. The world just sucks. And, my life sucks because of it, and I have no control over it. You do have control over it. And the ego holds on to you. The ego makes you want to fight. The ego makes you want to keep chaos. The ego makes you want to do all these things. And in order to make this conscious jump, this evolutionary jump, you have to be able to resolve the ego. You have to be able to step back and say, you know what? I feel sorry for George Floyd. I do, and I send deepest sympathies to his family and everybody and stuff like that. But if it's not your fight, then it is not your fight. And I know so many of you are going to have a problem with what I'm saying, and I understand that. I do, because I was there many, many lifetimes ago, when I used to believe in justification and injustice, when I used to believe in right and wrong and good or bad, these things drove me. And that's why I try to teach you about those 5 no-nos, because when you believe in those ideas that they're concepts, you literally will see that in life. Instead of seeing contracts and evolutionary growth and souls having to go through things to grow, and those contracts involving certain people, and that you see good and bad, right and wrong, positive, negative, backwards, forward, better, worse. You see that. You see justification and injustice. And that's what keeps you angry. That's what keeps you hateful. Because if you look at George Floyd, I mean, he was killed, May 25th, and by a cop kneeling on him, and that, as a human, yes, absolutely, that is horrible. That is horrible as a human to say. But as a spiritual person, as a spirit of who we really are, we see something bigger. We see something greater. And we have to look at bigger perspective. We can still have sympathy for people that go through some really tough times, but we have to see things in a brighter, bigger picture. Because if we only see things in a narrow view, then we are always in anger. We're always in pain. We're always in suffering. And we don't allow ourselves to grow. Because how can we grow if we're such at a low vibrational level? We can't. We must rise. And in order to rise, we have to take off the blinders. We have to allow ourselves to see things past what it is. It's always horrible when someone absolutely loses a life, especially over what we think is nonsense or something that's petty. But there's always a bigger plan for it. Those souls have a contract. Those souls have fated contracts for this to happen, to make the world change. I mean, if you look at it, these 2 souls and these cops have to take the job of going through this in order to teach the world. I mean, Greg Floyd, who is a spirit, has to incarnate as this guy, Greg Floyd, and his life has to end tragically. And these cops have to take this role in order for us to see that there's more to life, in order for us to get past these ideas of racism and hate and anger. And it goes beyond racism. It goes into homophobia and politics and everything. I mean, this is so much bigger than racism and what we see. But we have to be able to look at the ideas that are at hand. And so if you're going to sit there and look at things and say, well, a white man sat on a black man's neck and that's racist, and white people don't get it and black people don't get it, and we turn this whole chaotic into two groups of people fighting, what do you think that does to the world? What do you think that does to our consciousness? What do you think that does to our evolution? We cannot grow if we're pointing the fingers at others. Because I watched several shows that said, certain groups of people didn't get it. Certain races, you don't get it. You don't get it. Well, there's a lot of people that do get it. Maybe the vast majority doesn't get it, but some people do. Not everyone does. But you also have to look at it from the other side too. I mean, in our country alone, in our evolution, we have repressed a certain groups of people for a long time. And our Civil War was just back from 1865. And so, we have 160 years, or 155 years. That's nothing in time. That is literally, and plus after that you had all this segregation of school, bus, water, drinking fountains, all this stuff, just up until the 1950s and 60s. And that was 50, 60 years ago. And you're going to think that, and so people have to have compassion in that sense, that we're evolving. But that doesn't mean that we have to that we don't understand, or that other people don't understand. If you don't understand, then look at history. Look at humanity as a consciousness. Because we don't look at humanity as consciousness. We look at each other as people. And as long as we look at each other as people, we don't see what's beyond that. It's the most amazing thing when we choose to shift our consciousness from one thing to another. And so I'm imploring you to, I implore you to go out there and try to look at people and situations with a bigger scope. Say, okay, this is horrible. My human side of me, because we are human and you have a right. You do have a right to feel what you feel when you see that. Absolutely, you do have a right, and I will never knock someone for having an emotional reaction to what we think is a tragic situation. Absolutely not. But it's what we do with that emotion, what we do with that information. Remember, I always say emotions aren't real, but the experience behind the emotion is. And we use this thing called emotion as data to give us information so that we can translate what is going on. But if we get caught up in just the data and we don't translate it to something greater, then it just becomes a ball of energy. It becomes whatever we deem it to be, and that's where it goes. And so we have to look past this. We have to look at our fellow people and say, okay, in order for me to resolve who I am, in order for the humanity to resolve these things without more violence, without this stuff, we have to start looking at the bigger picture. We have to start seeing people in the bigger picture instead of blaming people and blaming certain ethnic groups for either acceptance or not acceptance or this or that, and then we have to look and see what it is we're going to do in that situation. So resolving the past, resolving the ego. And when we get past that, then, a lot of people feel vindicated because in the beginning, if we're still talking about George Floyd, they had charges, right? And it was the first charges were, I think, second or third degree manslaughter or murder or something. It was very minimal, and then the new charges came out. The Minnesota Attorney General said, I'm going to change this. I'm going to upgrade these things because this is horrible, and we need justice. We need justice because so many people are outraged, and so we have to upgrade this because what's happening. And so we're trying to change the outcome of our evolution. We're trying to change things by justification, and this does not work, people, in our world. You will never ever win as long as you believe in injustice and justification. You will never win as a soul, and you will never grow because there is no such thing as justice and injustification. When I used to do mediumship all the time, there was parents that would come to me or family members that had members killed and maybe it was a murder suicide or something, and they would say, I'm with this person and we're good friends, we've resolved it, we've let it go, you guys need to let it go. And I understood why. And the parents or the people would look at me and say, what do you mean they're friends? He killed her and then he killed himself. How could they be friends? He should be in a place called hell. And I said, no, it's not like that. It is not like that. It is contract. And I try to explain, but because we're so emotional in this idea of justice and injustice, that we lose sight of our bigger picture. I was talking to Caleb, I think it was yesterday, about the difference between our soul and our spirit. And although they are the same thing, a lot of times when our spirit incarnates into this body, we have what we call the soul. And the reason why they say the windows or the eyes are the windows to the soul is because that's true. So when our body is encompassed by our spirit, our body is inside. Our soul and spirit is not inside of us. Our spirit is outside and encompassed our physical body. And so when we look at these ideas and we say, okay, well, the windows to the soul only understands what we're here to learn. The soul becomes blind to ideas. The soul becomes blind to these subjects. The soul becomes angry. The soul becomes, frustrated. The soul becomes doesn't have the understanding because it's here to learn. But the spirit, who we truly are, understands a great deal more. And so a lot of times, and I was telling him, I go, sometimes when I'm teaching people, I look at their eyes, I look at their soul, because I know in order for their evolution to grow, they need to understand it at a soul level. That's what it means by a soul level. When I want their spirit, when I'm trying to get something on a grander scale for them to understand, then I talk to their spirit. I look here above their head and I talk there, because their spirit says, yeah, I got it. So, and it does understand, and slowly it passes the information down to something, to your soul, in order for you to start processing things, especially when I know that I can't get through to the soul. And so this is something, have you ever looked at yourself? Have you ever looked at yourself when you're happy? Have you ever looked at yourself when you're angry, or when you feel that, when all this stuff is going on and you feel stressed? Have you ever seen how your face and your eyes and everything change? It's an amazing thing. And that's because our energy shifts. And so when we have these things like George Floyd that happen, we literally will change who we are, our physiology, our emotional and spiritual and mental bodies. They literally transform to the density that we're adapting to. So the reason why we can't move past, if you're one of those that is struggling right now, the reason why you can't move past is because you have created this density, this energy of a low vibration. You have chosen, your soul refuses to see something greater. It refuses to expand itself into something more knowledgeable. And that's why I've always cherished knowledge. Knowledge doesn't make you a better person. Being super smart doesn't make you a better person. What I mean by knowledge is understanding. I don't mean book smart, knowing everything in books. When I say I appreciate knowledge, I say I appreciate understanding. And we are angry right now as a world because we do not understand what is going on. And that always tells me, when I see someone taking something personal, it is because we don't have a spiritual understanding of what's going on. So I ask yourself again, what is going on inside of you? What are the questions that are going inside of you? What is happening inside of you that makes things that makes this so personal? I mean, there's a lot in your mind to maybe take things personal, but in order for us to move past that, then we don't have to. So when we see these riots, we can be supportive, but we don't have to involve ourselves. When we see when we see a lot of things going on, we don't have to involve ourselves unless we feel there's a need for it. Maybe there is a need for it. Maybe you feel maybe you're contracted to be in something like this. But in order for you to understand that, you have to remove emotion. You cannot gain perspective of all this chaos if you have emotion. It's almost like a boulder. Like if this is perspective, if my hand's perspective and I'm trying to gain it by looking at it, I can't gain it if I have emotion blocking my view. If I'm trying to do it and my emotion is blocking me, I can't see my perspective because I have emotion blocking my path. And we are emotional beings because that's meant to transfer data. It's not meant to be real. And so to gain perspective on what it is, then you have to remove the emotion. And so how do we remove the emotion, right? That's the hard part. Because you're telling me, Miss Raina, that emotion's not real, but I feel angry, and I know I get angry. I know I get happy. I know I get sad. But until you understand that experience behind it, and what I mean by experience behind it is what the information that came to it. What was the information that created the emotion? Because you just don't get angry for no reason. If you didn't have half the experiences that happened to you, you would never be angry. You would never be happy. You'd never be sad. You'd never have grief. You'd never have fear, because you wouldn't have any experiences coming to you. So there's no such thing as emotion. It's the experience that comes to you, and how you process it is through emotion, or through this idea that we think is emotion, which is just energy transferring into us. And so we have to take that energy, understand it, transfer it, and apply it to how we want to grow. And that's how we start to resolve our energy. That's how we start to resolve our emotion. So, I mean, if you want to go turn everything into a racial thing, if you want to go turn everything into, straight versus gay or whatever, and that, then you're always going to be taking that outside information and creating blocks in front of everything. And you're going to be breaking, and not really breaking away, but I'm just saying you're going to be breaking that harmony inside of you. As I said earlier, we were talking a little bit about the chakras. The chakras are really real. I don't talk about them because, so many people talk about them on a lot of shows, and I just kind of feel like it's redundant a little bit. But what I found is a lot of people don't understand the alignment that happens, the energy alignment. And in order for us to determine where we're at our soul, we have to figure out what's going on. So, for example, so that you guys can understand, let's take a break really quick, and then I'll continue with this. We'll be right back after these messages from the life of Raina.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. If you're just tuning on, if you're just tuning in, not on, we are talking about what's going on in the world, all these riots, fighting chaos. We're talking about emotional energy and all sorts of stuff. And one of the funny things about being in channel when I'm channeling and talking is sometimes I lose my train of thought. And I'm glad I have Caleb over, because I was like, we're gonna take a break. I was deep in thought and I lost my channel for a second, and I actually forgot what we were talking about, and emotions not getting caught up and everything going on. Okay, and so thank you, Caleb. I appreciate that, and that's part of the channel. Sometimes that's part of the if we want to say downside to the channel, is sometimes we lose thought. It like wipes our mind out. but yes, so yes, not getting caught up in the emotions is so very important for our growth, because the soul wants to be aligned. And that's the reason why I say not to get involved in a lot of what's going on unless it's absolutely necessary and directly related towards you. Because a lot of times what we get involved in is not directly related to. Remember, we are here, people. This is our battleground. This is our playground for our souls, or for our spirit. We have to incarnate here in order to evolve. If we don't incarnate, if we don't learn lessons, if we don't experience these things, we don't evolve. And so people are going through things all over the world that they are going through things in order for their souls to evolve. So it's not good or bad, it's not right or wrong. And for us to get emotionally attached to this is where we struggle. This is where we start to kill ourselves as far as an emotion, as far as advancement. Because if we're trying to make that evolutionary jump and we're caught in our emotions, we can't rise, because you need to be up here in order to make this jump. If you're here, all the way down into the root sacral chakra, or you're bringing your energy down and you're just emotional and you're getting into that, and then you can't make that jump. You can't do that. You can't advance. You have to learn to get yourself out of this. You have to learn to disassociate from this. So if you're getting caught up in your emotions, if you're getting caught up in everything, and it's because you're choosing to. And I know a lot of people hate that. A lot of people hate to hear that it's your choice, because you're like, well, the world's going on and I have to live in it. Yes, you do. But that does not mean that you have to take part in everything that's going on. The COVID happened, didn't affect me anything. The riots, fighting, all this stuff going on, yes, I am deeply saddened by it, but it is not part of my evolutionary growth. It is for certain people to go through, and they have to understand what the pain and suffering is, and how to fight in order for them to grow. And as a spiritualist, I have to look at it and be grateful for them, for their growth. I mean, this is a wonderful thing happening. I mean, so many people are angry. Have you ever thought about how amazing what's going on? I mean, we look at chaos as such a rough thing, as such a horrible thing that happens in our lives. But without chaos, without struggle, without this pain and suffering, we don't grow, we don't learn. And so if you're sitting in justification and you're sitting in emotion and you can't see that perspective, and that, then you're always going to be stuck in where you are. And I see a lot of people that I see a lot of people. I see a lot of people stuck right now. And there's no need for you to be stuck. You can feel, and it's fueled. I really, and let me, and I don't know why this is popping in, but a lot of you watch TV, a lot of you watch media, a lot of you watch social media. That is very, very toxic for many of you. It is very toxic. If you're an emotional person who has no control over their emotions, if you take things personally, if you're always like riled up about things, social media, TV, like anything that's like media driven, any of those things is really toxic for you to watch. And I guarantee you're drawn to that because it's that cycle, that ego part, that victim that wants to keep you there. And if I know right now, even though we're trying to come together, TV is trying to split us apart. I mean, I'm seeing now, I'm seeing things that if we're talking about racism still, I'm seeing things that basketball players are saying, well, I don't like white people and white people do this. And now I'm seeing white people say, well, I'm dropping out of NASCAR because if I can't, if I can't wave the Confederate flag, the media and social media is trying to play this on us to keep you in that. So it is your choice what you're going to do and what you're choosing to get involved in. If you are constantly dealing with depression, sadness, grief, if you constantly take things personally, do not watch TV. Do not be on social media. Do not go to these outlets that create more hate and anger. It does no good for you. And if you find yourself becoming involved and you better do this because of the coronavirus, you better do this because otherwise you're racist or whatever it is, then you're becoming that and you're lowering yourself. It is such a tricky slope, but the wonderful thing, some people are waking up. I know that a lot of people had a hard time with Colin Kaepernick, who is a football player for the San Francisco 49ers. When he took a knee, he was trying to do a protest peacefully. And what ended up happening, the media spun it, and people just dived into it. You're not American. You're not this. You're not this if you believe, if you act this way. And the country became divided. It became hateful because the media told people how to feel and how to act. Imagine if there was none of that. Imagine if you separated yourself and you saw things in a bigger perspective. And what is funny is there's a lot of people who turned against him are now saying, after all this stuff, all this chaos, because their soul is advancing, they're saying, you know what? And they're tweeting it out to him. They're sending it out. They've called him, wrote him, and they say, we apologize. Even the NFL commissioner said, we were wrong to ban you. We were wrong to shun you for kneeling. Now we see what you were trying to do. And how late is it? I mean, he's been out of football for 2 years now? I mean, he's been shunned, hate, and for what? Because he saw something a little differently. And a lot of people had narrow mind, and because we got our emotions, we weren't able to see his perspective. We weren't able to see any other perspective but our emotions because it was blocking us. And now there's certain people that are like, oh my God, I get it. Someone had to die in order for other souls to grow. Remember contracts. Remember, all this stuff ties in. So as painful as this is, start looking at the wonderful things. Start looking at the ways to expand. If you see depression and anger in a world, that's because that is who you are. So start trying to find where it is, what you can understand, what you can take out of this, how you can grow. Because going on the streets fighting cops and throwing things back and forth at each other is not a way for us to grow. And I get it. I get there's a lot of agitators, people planted in protest that start fights on peaceful protests, so cops, I get all that stuff. But again, it's still the same idea. No matter what argument you have, it's still the same idea. No matter what side you are on of COVID-19, of protests, racism, homophobia, transgender, whatever you are on, and that there's always that perspective that you can gain, and there's always that emotion that you can take away in order for you to grow. Remember, what is going on is meant for you to grow and find compassion, find understanding, not find blame. Never to find blame. It is always to find the understanding of who we are as a soul, as an individual, and as humanity for us to grow. Because the earth is a living being. A lot of people don't realize that. We know the earth is living, but a lot of times people don't realize that the planets are living beings. These are living conscious souls and we are growing out of that conscious soul. We are we're not just an extension. We are that soul. So we are earth. And when we transmute that energy, we start to break that energy apart. These souls are so advanced, these souls are so deep, these souls are so evolved that they understand what's going on, except for us. And so we have to learn to understand that. We have to stop placing blame. And so if you're mad at J.K. Rowling right now because I know she made a tweet about gender, about people that are transgender, and and that's saying something about I think a menstrual cycle or whatever, and now all the Harry Potter cast and all these people, all these fans are dumping her and on her, and yes, but we don't have to get involved in that. How we change that is move away from it. The best example I can give, or one of the best examples, and I was talking to Kayla about this the other day. If you're however old you are, maybe you're 25, 40, and a 5-year-old comes up to you and starts fighting with you because they think they understand something, are you going to fight back with them? No, you're not, right? You're not going to fight back. Why? Because they're 5, and because they only have a very limited perspective of what they are talking about, because they've only lived 5 years. Now let's take that into an evolutionary point. Let's say, okay, maybe a soul has lived 100,000 years or 100,000 lifetimes, and another soul has lived only 10,000 lifetimes. That's the same thing as a 45-year-old versus a 5-year-old. And so why are you allowing yourself to get involved in this? You don't have to. You do not have to allow yourself to get involved in order for that to happen. You have to evolve. You have to recognize that is not part of your transition. That is not part of who you are as a soul, your evolution, and that is part of theirs in order for them to get to where they need to go. And so it is very tense, and I know that even coming up here in the United States is the elections. And if we think 2020 is over with the chaos, for many it's not going to be. But again, politics, religion, spirituality, racism, all these ideas throw fuel to the fire. And so if you're going to get all riled up about the elections coming up, you're choosing to stay in that emotion, and you're choosing to be able to not grow. It is a choice that you have to make. I choose not to get involved. I fight my ways. Like when I fight for the understanding of humanity. I fight for the understanding of consciousness, because I see my fellow people as who they are. and what lessons they have to learn. And as you grow, that type of expansion starts to happen. And so someone like J.K. Rowling, yes, what she said, yes, that's not nice. But I understand that she hasn't developed a consciousness to say, you know what? All people are people, no matter if they're boy, girl, transition, if they're black, white, straight, gay, whatever it is. She hasn't developed that consciousness. Just like a 5-year-old hasn't developed a consciousness of a 15-year-old. Just like a 15-year-old hasn't developed a consciousness of a 35-year-old, and so on and so on. And so people are at where they're at for a reason. And so I'm begging you to allow yourself to take a step back from everything. If they spark up this COVID-19 thing again to make it seem like it's spreading wildfire, don't involve yourself. Just take care of you, take care of your soul, take care of your family, and that's what you have to worry about. The election, don't get involved in red versus blue versus yellow versus green versus pink versus purple. Don't get involved in that. Figure out where you want to stand, figure out what's important for you, and that's all that's important for you. Don't get involved into the social media, the hype, the media, everything else. Oh, I didn't even realize that it's time's up already. And yeah, it's gone by fast as always, isn't it? But yeah, guys, I mean, there are so many wonderful things. The space shuttle launch happened. I wish we could talk the Starlink access. There are so many things happening in the world that's advancing our souls. Focus on that. Focus on the things that, and I don't mean positive and negative, because we already know that there's no such thing as positive and negative. I'm not telling you to focus on the positive, ignore the negative. That is not what I've talked about this whole podcast. Is I want you to start focusing on the things that are going to make you expand your mind. Because as we reach out into space, as we reach out into growth, as we reach out in medicine and all this stuff, so do our ideas of who we really are. And how wonderful is that? How wonderful is that for you to realize there's so much more for you to learn about life and who you are? Or you can keep getting caught up in all this chaos, all this fighting, and keep being a miserable person until you choose to remove this thing we call emotion and look at perspective for what it really is. All right, everybody, that is tonight's show. I am done, and hopefully all the sound and everything reworked. We're going to tweak some things and make sure everything's working back up, because ever since Restream went down Tuesday, we're having some technical difficulties. But if you want to follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/transcendental transformation. YouTube is the same thing. Make sure you sign up for my website, soulandspiritguide.com. Sign up for the VIP or to get VIP access for hidden shows, and for and if we have any guests, they sometimes send out special gifts for people who are part of our mailing list. And if you have any questions, comments, we're always on Twitch Live and Facebook Live, or email me at transcendentaltransformations, that's plural, at gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.